Now, it's hard to remember a greater time of risks to global supply chains. We live and work in a volatile, uncertain, and disrupted world. The global pandemic has finally eased, only to be replaced by a war in the EMEA region. And all around us, we're seeing risks arising from the cost of living crisis, the rise of activism, staff shortages in key industries, and of course, rising levels of cargo crime. Everywhere we look, we see the resilience of businesses and their supply chains tested like never before. In response, new technologies, AI, digitisation, and a growing range of security and intelligence solutions are helping companies navigate these challenges as we accelerate into the future of supply chain resilience. Today, we are joined by a panel of experts ready to share their views on supply chain risks and resolutions. So please join me in welcoming on stage our panelists. Steve Baycott, from Land Risk Manager at Risk Intelligence. Do join us. Joe Ryan, Vice President, Fusion Hub at Overhaul. Michaelis Chronopoulos, Head of Security Risk Management at G4S Telematix. Cedric Pongers, Digital Solutions Regional Sales and Customer Success Leader for the Netherlands, UK, Ireland, and the Nordics at ZF Group. And Francesco Giannini, Managing Director of Multi Protection. Please join me in welcoming them all. And once again, we have a fantastic panel lined up here, so we really do encourage any questions from the audience. We have our 2 roving microphones. You just need to put your hand up, and one of my colleagues will be with you to provide you with a microphone. So maybe we could just start by all briefly introducing yourself and your organization just very, very quickly so everyone knows who you all are. Michaelis.
Hello, everyone. So I'm representing G4S, and for those you don't know, G4S is a supply chain company because we have been carrying lots of money with armored vehicles around the globe, but we won't be discussing about this today. Today we would like to see about the risk, and which is in our DNA as a company, risk and awareness, and hopefully we can share some of our knowledge with you. You might find it interesting, especially after the lunch. I'm not sure how easy it's going to be. So, very pleased to be here and more than welcome to have any questions related to our topics.
Steve, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Great to see you all after lunch. I'm with Risk Intelligence, and we provide security risk intelligence for our clients to help them with planning more secure routes and obviously avoiding everybody's threat here of cargo theft. So I'm looking forward to a chat today to talk about these emerging risks.
Thanks, Steve. Francesco.
Very active, yes. I'm Francesco Giannini. I'm the Managing Director for Multi Protection, an Italian company that develop, integrate, install, and manage high-level security system for HVTT transport and even for telematics, so driving hours and all the things related to trucks.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Joe Ryan. I'm VP of Intelligence and Response for Overhaul. And Overhaul is a platform for visibility, compliance, risk management, and now insurance. So risk management and emerging risks are really important to us, and we try to provide that to our clients in managing their risk profiles. Great to be here.
Cedric.
Yeah, at first I want to thank TAPA for inviting me. Thank you for having me. Hopefully I can add something to the discussion. My name is Cedric. I work for ZF Group. ZF is a very big organization, very likely under the radar, but if you see a truck and a trailer, it's very likely that a lot of ZF components will be on there. I work for the division System Solutions Digital, and in that division we provide connected services for transportation organizations. With that, it's also partly TAPA, based on TAPA requirements, and our added value is to provide the connected services in, let's say, the customized way for the fleet owners, and quite some fleet owners are in this room, also some familiar ones. So happy to enlighten you a little bit more on what we do and what our take is on all kind of risk stuff.
Thanks, Cedric. Let me start with sort of asking all of you a little bit about the big focus areas right now. We will come to emerging risks later, but first let's talk about the big focus areas that you're being asked about. What are you most commonly being asked about, and what are the main areas for supply chain resilience at the moment? Steve, let me ask you first.
Sure. I mean, a question that we're asked constantly is, where can I park? It's great. We've got TAPA PSR secured sites. We've got EU SSTPA secured sites, but we don't have enough right now. And I think everybody is looking, most of the action is taking place at the rest areas and services that are not secure. And a question I'm always asked is, where can I park? Are there independent operators who are not certified? What about a site that is more medium level security? That is the problem. It's an issue that's not going to change anytime soon. There's still not enough parking, even though there's been great efforts, particularly by TAPA, to push for more sites. But that's a big problem that we get asked all the time. There's just nowhere enough along every route to park.
Cedric, let me ask you, and Michaelis, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, when we talk with our fleet owners on supply chain, I would say the supply chain is as strong as the weakest part. We've seen that with the Ever Given in the Canal of Suez, which had a very big impact on the supply chain, and fleet owners that we have as customers are very dependent on that. When you saw that, plus the COVID part, what was discussed earlier, you saw that it had an immediate impact on their volumes and their reliability. And it's always a puzzle for the fleet owner. Where is that weakest chain in the chain, and how you can enforce that? And that's a part where we as a technology provider can play a role, but let's say it's their process, so we can support that with what we do. But in the end, that's one of the things that where we bump into every day with the fleet owners that we talk to is we can help digitize a process in whatever way, but sorry for the word, if it's a shitty process, then we need to digitize a shitty process, and that's very tough. So it's also our challenge very often to optimize that process before digitizing it.
Michaelis, and I'll come to you, Francesco, next.
Yeah. So what we have seen and experienced is that we need to change our model of how we work. Currently, what we're trying to do is we're trying to co-create our solutions with the customers. It doesn't make any point now creating products and then testing them afterwards, because the process is taking too long. So our methodology now is we go with the customers. We don't consider them customers, it's partners actually, because we're all partners against crime. And co-creating is the only way forward for us. And we have heard Thorsten say, from the people for the people. So for us, it's from the customer for the customer, the process we follow. And we analyze the data. What we would see as a first priority today would be focusing on subcontractors, and we have heard enough about what is the risk using subcontractors and subcontractors. So our main focus would be how we could provide visibility into that process and understand the risks and find solutions working together in that.
And we'll talk more about subcontractors a little later on in more detail. Francesco.
Yes. I agree with Michaelis, because process is the base of every protection that we can put in place. So we can talk about park, we can talk about everything, but we still have a truck on the road that if the trip is not well organized, is subject to risks. So what I would like to add is that the final customer, that normally is the manufacturer or the big logistics company, is asking more and more visibility, not a lot just for the trip when it started, but even before, to be certain that their goods are traveling under the security rules agreed with the transport company or the logistics provider. So a sort of triangulation of the automatic triangulation of the information to be sure to load the goods to the truck that is already planned to do a trip under the security rules agreed. This is what I think.
And finally, Joe, the current focus areas right now.
I think our customers, given all the disruption that we've just heard of from the Ukraine war to the Ever Given to COVID to everything, that the whole system has been unbalanced so much that customers are constantly asking, from the strategic to the tactical to the operational, where is the best, what are the best routes, where are the issues, what are the modus operandi, etc. So when you're dealing with different levels of customers, we're getting these different requests. But I think the last 3 years there has been a bigger emphasis around understanding where it is, from visibility to compliance to risk management. And unless you categorize your risks into strategic, tactical, operational, it's very hard to set compliance measures against it. And I think our biggest questions coming into us from clients at the moment is trying to get an understanding of that whole risk area that they are exposed to on those different levels, and trying to join it up in their own minds using their own service providers, including us, as to how they are going to mitigate that. I just think there's a lot of confusion out there at the moment, and we need things to settle down. I'm not sure they are going to settle down, but that's where we are.
Well, let's try and look into the future a little bit now and talk about what the emerging risks you're seeing coming out. Joe, we'll stick with you. Yeah. What emerging risks are we needing to be aware of?
Yeah, it's so volatile at the moment, and as much as we wish that it settles down, but you know, I think we're still feeling the knock-on from geopolitical issues of friend-shoring to near-shoring, and how those supply chain pinch points change. So, you know, when we change from China to Southeast Asia, and then a lot of American companies are changing to Mexico or coming back into Europe with some legislation on producing. So that really upsets the supply chain. So once it's upset, the capacity isn't there. You can have issues with drivers, and that's why I think we have this brokering, double brokering, triple brokering, and trying to understand who actually owns your shipment, who has custody of your goods. And between that and visibility, as we were talking about, mixing it with this constant situation that's in flux, that's where I see us having to deal with at the moment, I think.
Okay, Joe, thank you. Steve, where would you say the emerging risks we need to watch out for are?
Yeah, sure. I think what has been discussed just now and obviously this morning with increased digitisation is a huge issue. And not to steal thunder from later in the discussion, but I think with the current economic climate, the increase in strike action, protest, increased unionisation because people are feeling their livelihoods threatened. I think this potential disruption and the secondary impacts that can cause with delays to shipments, which are then vulnerable to cargo theft. I think this problem isn't going to go away anytime soon, and we need to have contingencies for when those disruptions occur.
Michaelis.
So I think the previous panel touched based on what are the emerging risks already, and having a global presence gives us this visibility. For example, with some of this, the TAPA team, we were in South Africa, and we get 2 to 3 armored vehicles being blown up every month. So what we have discussed about Latin America previously, we have already seen coming also, and the violence in the events that we are recording is growing dramatically. And what we would like to focus on is, first of all, our people And that's why solutions that you have heard before about mobile CCTV and having cameras in the trucks is what we already deploying right now, and going what we had with the facility and having cameras and AIs and providing perimeter control with cameras being deployed now into vehicles. So this is something that we have already working, focusing mainly on our people and of course having eyes on the cargo rather than doing remote monitoring, which is what we would be focusing now.
Cedric, and then Francesco, I'll come to you. Oh, go ahead, Francesco. Emerging risks that you're seeing, and then Cedric.
So I would like to come back to a more easy topic, so the real life of every day, because we already talked about the big risks, and I don't spend more word on this. What we see from our experience is that the focus of the criminals, at least Italy and Southern Europe, are more and more focused on the medium and low value transport, because they know that normally they are less protected. And so what I think, I spent almost all my professional life in doing security management for big transport companies. So then I decided to step on the other side of the desk, but the experience is still there. I have to say that this is something that in the last years is more and more common. So normally when they plan an attack, they are well informed and they know that if on a truck there is a good system, it's difficult to steal. So they are now moving their attention to this kind of goods that are not such a big value, but they can be easy sold. So they are easy and quickly sold. So they have maybe less money back from the theft, but in a short time and in an easier way. So in my opinion, this is a big risk that we are facing now as a provider.
Cedric, but let me also tack another question on Cedric, not only emerging risks, but maybe I could ask you as well about how advances in technology are changing what you're doing as well, and how technology is moving with those emerging risks.
I see, let's say, two risks. One, there was during pandemic a very big lack of truck drivers. You see the economy going a little bit flattening out, and therefore the availability of truck drivers is getting back a little. So that's, let's say, a capacity and also a quality risk. And when you look at the average age of truck drivers, that's above 45. And let's say, like my kids, they don't want to be a truck driver. So that's where I see a long-term capacity risk popping up slowly. We, as ZF Group, try to take the responsibility in order to facilitate that truck driver in his cabin as good as possible with a board computer or with a mobile app in order that he can execute his job management in the best possible way. And the other risk, and also directly a responsibility from ZF, is that what you mentioned is that the digitisation. A lot of fleet owners say to me, yeah, we are on some kind of digital infield. I don't know if it's the right English word, but as soon as, let's say, there's a little crack in there, they lose the overview of 1,500 trucks. So there's a great dependency also in their supply chain. For example, when they supply parts to a truck assembly line somewhere in Europe, they have an ETA between 12 and 1. And that specific truck is going to be assembled. The chassis bars are on their way, the axles are on their way, the chairs are on their way, the cabin is on the way. And if one part is missing, then they're basically screwed because they have to put it aside because one truck is too late. So the vulnerability of digital solutions and having good ETA predictions is very high. And that's what I see as an ongoing risk plus responsibility. But could you rephrase
Yeah,
your
and the
last
other
question?
part, yeah, the other part sort of really was advancements in technology as well, how that's changing and changing what you're doing, and also more importantly, how it's going to accelerate solutions in the next few years.
Yeah,
and
one
what's
of the
that
things that
timescale?
very likely will accelerate is AI, where there are a lot of dependencies for, we heard in the preparation, we talked about the dispatcher a little bit. And if that dispatcher should be responsibility for risk, the responsibility of the dispatcher is to have a full truckload, that he can, let's say, transport stuff as economically as possible. So from my opinion, the risk should not be there. So the algorithms that ZF is building will help improve processes to have more automated and easy decisions. And that's what I see, that we are in the early beginnings of also using AI in digitization, that a process can be optimized with AI over time. That will take some time, but I think in 10 years we will get there. Now there are maybe 5 or 6 layers of software within a transportation company, where they have their ERP system, where they have their TMS system, where they have their planning and routing layer. Then, for example, ZF can provide the FMS layer, which is the execution layer. And all those things can communicate with each other, but are still scattered. I would say over time, it could be that, and I expect it to be very likely, that it will be more integrated in one bigger overarching solution, where the reliability is the utmost.
Michaelis, let me come to you on that. What advancements in technology are there that are changing what you do?
Yeah, the technology is here to support the supply chain, and what we have seen is the lack of visibility and transparency. That's the problem, because a GPS tracker is a commodity now. I would be surprised if a truck or a van would not have a GPS tracker, but when we go again to the subject of the subcontractors, you just subcontract the shipments, and you have, although they might have a GPS tracker, you have no access to that, you have no visibility. So in the old days, it would be a process of integrating multiple platforms and solutions into a single system for a company to be able to monitor their operations. Today, with what we have seen with this disruption and finding quick solutions and trying to get more and more people involved just to get the ATA that you want, the cost reduction, whatever, you don't have enough time for your IT to do integrations. You don't have enough time to control the data and the information. And that's where technology today, I believe it can help. Of course, AI, it's a major player, and we do believe it's going to change the game. But let's start collecting the data first, which is the most critical part, and then we can see how we can analyze them and how we can see if our suppliers are actually performing as expected, because we would like to work on the preventing part of the risk rather than having to deal with an investigation. So I have suppliers, I gave them some guidelines, they should be knowing what to do, but is everyone monitoring them? Do they actually know if they're performing as expected? That's a critical point and a huge risk that we see. So technology could support that process, yes.
Would any of you three like to pick up on that as well? Or yeah, Francesco.
Thank you. What we see for the next future, I come back to the high value transport, is to arrive to have something like an intelligent truck that can in some way, so we are, in example, we are on this way, we are not at the top, but we already started to do, making the truck that under certain condition, as a first thing, react alone to an attack before the intervention of the monitoring room. This can allow to gain time and to have the time to call the police and do all the security procedure that we must do. In the next future, we are running a little business on very high risk sites with artificial intelligence applied on the thermal camera and so on. We see as a next step to be able to manage the security of the truck with artificial intelligence in real time in order to have two results. Imagine that our monitoring room is managing something like 12,000 alarms per day, that 99% of them are generated from, not from emergency causes, so lack of procedure, wrong use of the system, and so on. We think that with, when we will have good guarantee connection, we hope with the 5G and artificial intelligence applied on camera on the truck, I think that we can easily reduce of a lot of figures the false alarm we manage, upgrading the security level, and be very precise on the intervention. Imagine all the time when a truck is driving at 90 km per hour in an highway and we receive an alarm. It can be an attack while moving, but 99% of the time is the rear door that are not totally aligned, and the rear contact get out from the minimum tolerance. With the artificial intelligence applied with the CCTV on truck, so we just need to copy and paste what we are doing on the building, on the fixed site. We can do in the next 2-3 years something very, very useful and very, very strong against all the attacks we remark today.
Steve, and then Joe, I'll come to you afterwards.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. For us, I think that using technology is a journey. There's a lot of incident reporting out there. We put a lot out. TAPA put a lot out. The clients are forwarding it, etc. But it's all after the event. And as Michaelis said, we want to be more in a prevention business. So we're obviously looking to cost-effective technology that can help us with the, it was mentioned earlier today, predictive analytics. How can we forecast where the next problem's going to be? And I don't think right now that technology is the only solution. I think having a team of qualified, experienced analysts who can interpret the data we have can help. But of course, AI and other tools, they can help us connect the dots we can't see. And that way we can hopefully forecast these emerging threats at more of a tactical level, so that we can factor it into our route planning, etc. So even for dinosaurs like me, it's embracing the technology and actually using it to assist the human analysis is going to be a big focus of us going forward.
And what sort of technology timescales are you seeing with that?
Well, I'm trying to keep up. No, it's there's a lot going. I think I don't foresee that there won't be a human analyst in the loop in what we do for a number of years yet, because the tools are great on collection, they're great on visualizing certain trends. But I still think, the human brain still takes some beating to make sense of that. So, I don't think we're out of a job yet. So I think it's going to be a great tool going forward. But I think it's years away before we can just press the red button and get the answers, which is good for me.
Joe.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, being a fellow dinosaur. There's two things I'd like to pick up on there. One is advances in technology, and when visibility became the big word a few years ago, everybody wanted to know where their product was or where their truck was, etc. Very quickly, it moved then to compliance, as in, I think as we take on a new client, they'd be actually surprised when you told them how their network operated. They had no idea. So visibility solved that problem for them. Then we'd sit down and we'd work out some compliance issues. So if someone broke a compliance rule, and then when you get the metrics of that, you say, well, let's put in some risk management or risk mitigation around people who are not compliant. But the issue for us is that every supply chain is unique. Every client wants different things. Constant moving environment with all the issues that we spoke about. So I used to enter a job and I used to say my job is to make sure I don't have a job in 2 years' time, because I'm going to fix the problems that I'm here to fix. But that has been a moving environment constantly. So I think the big step forward now is, for us, is AI analyzing the data that we're getting. And you can only do that at scale. And I'd agree with Steve that you do need an analyst in the loop there somewhere. AI isn't where it's going to be in a number of years. So absolutely analysts need to be in there. But to us, I think the big one would be Chat GPT, because it was my job to standardize packages to clients. You have this visibility, you have this compliance, we'll report on this and we'll tell you that. But their needs constantly change, so their instructions to us constantly change. And we are now trialing where we have about 300 watch officers monitoring shipments on behalf of clients. The instructions just became so difficult that we had to assist that watch officer, and we're doing that through ChatGPT, or we're hoping that that will do it for us. So we don't have to standardize. We can get ChatGPT to follow the instruction, no matter how peculiar, unusual it is, the contact details. If it's not with this carrier, who are we going to call? Who did they send it to? Who has custody of it now? All those things. You'd have to go through 50 foolscap pages if you wanted to do it manually. So I think that's going to be the big advancement. But the second part I'd like to pick up on is that we've got 5 or 6 people up here on the stage and on previous presentations, and we're all quite similar. And I think we're getting to the glass ceiling now, that we're going to have to share the data that we have. And a real example of that for us is Mexico, where a number of monitoring stations, people who do the same thing as we do here, got together and said, we are going to share our first-party data. And they shared it anonymously, but it has enabled us now to predict. And when I heard it first, I was saying, I'm not sure this is going to be successful. But with the volume of data, with the cooperation of partners sharing that data, with analysts and AI digging into that, we're now able to say that along a 50-mile stretch that will constantly change because criminals change their modus operandi, etc., we can predict that there's going to be a hijacking there on Wednesday or Thursday night. Now, I was the first to put my hand up and go, rubbish, you're not going to be able to do that. But we analysed all our predictions for the year, we ran it through this system, and we looked at the reality, which is what the type of data that Steve is, and we are 70% correct. Now, I just think that is an amazing figure. And that's an example of what can be done. And I think earlier today we were talking about DHL, we're talking about cooperation and getting back, and he said what happens in America will come to Europe. Well, my experience is what happens in Brazil comes to Mexico, what happens in Mexico comes to the US, what happens in the US comes to Europe. So that's the way we need to advance from a technology point of view. We need to share data, we need good AI, we need good analysts, and then we need to start making these predictions.
Cedric.
Our fleet owners, well, they are very scared on sharing data. One of the things that we promise to them is that we take care of their data, we secure it, we store it, and nobody can touch it unless they have given their consent. And with that said, that is also one of the requirements from TAPA, that it really has to be at the highest security level. We have the good luck that we are a large company and we have the ability to really secure that part. And the recommendation that we do to our customers regarding sharing data is they really should be careful in what they share. And despite the fact that it's anonymous, nobody wants to have 1,000 trucks data shared, that their positions are all over Europe. That would be a big risk for them. And we know, based on the magic word visibility versus GDPR, that can have some conflicts there.
So how do we address that challenge then?
Well, the data is not ours, right? The data is from our customer, the fleet owner, and they decide for their business what they will do with their data. And there are commercial parties in the world that say, well, we can help you and we will provide you ETA predictions. Can we have an integration with your platform? And then the fleet owner says it's fine, and then we see a very big load of what they take from our backend. And then we will go check with them, hey, is this what you want? Is this what you agreed upon? Yes or no? So we are also some kind of a data watchdog there, trying to, let's say, help them with their data security.
Yeah, I'll just answer this in case you think I'm living in a commune, we're all going to share everything. Obviously, there's restrictions to sharing, but what I'm suggesting is that we need to get over those restrictions. You know, as an industry that want to talk about visibility, compliance, risk management, we at some stage have to find a formula where clients and service providers under some kind of organization and restrictions and agreement share data. I mean, we're simply all in our silos at the moment going, this is mine, we're a commercial company, I'm selling this for this reasons, and I totally understand that. But there is such an amount of data out there, we're drowning in data that we're not taking the opportunity to analyze correctly and move this industry forward. You know, otherwise we're going to have the same problems next year, the year after. At some stage, we need to break that glass ceiling under agreements, etc. I totally agree with that.
But before we move on, Francesco, I could see you nodding. Did you want to add anything to that?
No.
No, just in agreement. Okay.
I just really I have to say one thing that Joe started to say, but you know, I just would like to add, just for joke, you forgot that what burned in the south of Italy come up all over Europe in terms of incident and capacity to steal. Yeah, we have the university there, you know.
You're absolutely right. South of Italy
is so just for joke.
We move on to another topic because we've got about 10 minutes left. So just quickly, Joe, just to stay with you quickly, do logistics planners and managers, and Francesco touched on this a little bit earlier, but do they really take risk into account during the route planning process?
Oh, this is a good question. Have I to answer as a security service provider or as a former security manager of a company? I don't know. It depends. From my experience, they need to be driven to the protection of the cargo and to the consequences that happens if they don't take in account risks. Then we even have solution to avoid this. An example, we developed with one of our biggest customer some software implementation that, in example, doesn't allow the operations to plan a trip if on that truck there are faults that are dangerous for the trip. So an upgraded authorization is that normally is security people is needed to allow that truck to make the trip because I don't know, additional security measures have to be implemented. In example, so you know. The first word of the operational is ATA, 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 load ATA, load ATA. So again, they in most of the times they do, but as I said before, who is aiming to steal a truck or to steal goods from truck is well informed. So you can see in the 90% of the incident that the truck stolen or the goods stolen were from a truck without security, that was planned without security. So the answer is this one. Yeah.
Joe, would you like to add anything to that? And I think Cedric, and then I'll come to you, Michaelis, about subcontractors.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, we've a huge amount of data, risk analysis, risk data, etc. But it's where you're plugging into the organization and who's going to pay attention to that. And I totally understand big organizations have levels and their own restrictions. But from this side of the table, risk and risk mitigation, and we're trying to preach that. I do find that logistic managers find it very difficult to say, I'm going to change this route, I'm going to change this carrier. You know, you're getting a lot of people involved to do that. And at the end of the day, 99% of everything that goes out the door gets delivered on time and intact. And we've got some risk managers stamping their feet, giving out about the last 1%. But in high value, in critical parts that are going to stop a production line, I really feel that we have to present our risk management and our mitigation of that in a better way, so that planners pay attention to it. And I mean, we see open examples with clients where we go, we actually give them names of drivers and carriers. Do not give your product to this carrier or driver, and they do, and then we're back in the recovery point of view. And it's just so hard to get that message in. There doesn't seem to be joined up thinking. And that's not a criticism. Everyone's under pressure. We all have our own aspects to deliver. And, you know, if they're delivering 99%, they're probably happy. But I just find it very difficult.
Cedric, I think you wanted to say something as well, but just before you do, we've got about 7 minutes left. So if anybody does have a question, please raise your hand.
I will do it really quick. In the former panel, there were 5 major shippers. They have contracts with the carriers. And I would say that...
Try again. The microphone drops. Yeah, we'll try this one. Okay.
Shippers and carriers. I think when a shipper chooses a carrier, the risk part should be in the contract. And as in, hey, what kind of standards do we need to meet? So in the end, it starts with a commercial decision, and then there needs to be a quality standard and also a safety standard in there. The challenge of every single day of the dispatcher in the fleet owners is, how can I arrange a full truckload? Because that's where they have very thin margins. That's where their margin is. And I would say that's his daily job. How can I combine this freight into the southern part of Italy for whatever reason, bringing value goods there and bringing tomatoes back, whatever, right? That's the dispatcher's day-to-day job. And I don't think it's a right angle to expect from a dispatcher that he can assess risk. That should be in a more structural way there.
Let me just move it to Michaelis. I don't know if we'll try that other microphone as well in case it started working again.
Test.
No, okay. We'll play hot potato with this one. Here we go. Thank you, Michaelis. I just wanted to. We've got about 5 minutes left. Thank you, Yannick. Just to touch more on outsourcing and subcontractors, could you expand a little bit more on the risks that creates for an organisation?
Yeah, it comes to the point that you have the contract in place, you have all the obligations of the subcontractor written down, everyone signs a contract, but we all know a contract ends up having some claims, or that's the real time when you read all the clauses of the contract. So what we're trying to avoid here is, very well said, Rod, you have to have a process. So you'll decide who is going to be your forwarder, what kind of company, what kind of security level, but technology should be assisting into the process of, do they comply? It's not only about subcontractors in general. And we know TSR standards, okay? Everyone understands, recognizes them. Do they follow them every single time? There is a way to monitor that. So that's why we propose technology and, of course, all the platforms that collect the data. They could analyze the data, they could give us some flags. You have the no-go zones. Everyone knows about it. Do they comply? Whenever you get into your system a message that this truck is not in the right path, it's not in the right parking. We know about secure parkings. There shouldn't be parking there. There should be supported by the technology. And when it comes to subcontractors, then is where you should apply simple technology. We know about asset trackers, we know about all these devices and technology that will give you this visibility. And I know visibility can be used a lot as a word, but it is the biggest problem today, because all the investigations we do is about what went wrong. And it could be people didn't follow the processes, yeah. Technology failing, not so much lately. We see technologies quite good at that point. Mostly it's a human error, or someone didn't follow the process, or our subcontractor, our supplier, whoever is not up to the point that we would like to have. So why don't we get these flags? Why don't we get through the systems all this information, evaluate it, and start working with this data? That's the only way forward for me.
And I'm just going to move on quickly because we've just got a few minutes left. I did promise we'd come back to the cost of living crisis, Steve, which we haven't touched upon. I'm going to throw something slightly different in as well. Climate activism is also something that we need to be aware of. Can you just tell us how much of an issue those are and how they can be manifesting themselves in the supply chain?
Sure. I mean, we've reported, we all watch the news. Climate is massive on the global agenda. Obviously, companies have got green programs accordingly. But we've seen coordinated action by climate activist groups, like, for instance, in Berlin and London, where they've, created blockages of main transit routes around Berlin with 30 plus, over 30 individual protests, and that just totally freezes traffic at that time, which is obviously causing disruption and delay. And when trucks are delayed, they may miss their delivery deadlines, they may miss their planned secure parking for the night, which then leaves them in their contingency planning, and we don't have enough secure parking, so they're vulnerable to cargo theft. But also we're seeing some hardening on both sides of the fence, where we're seeing climate activist groups that are determined to disrupt as much as possible, and governments taking additional legislation so that they can forcibly remove them. In The Hague, we had 5,000 climate activists detained to clear them from the A12. In London, the police now have legislation to move them to the footway. But we're starting to see that the public are becoming more confrontational when they're those that are actually being delayed. And we're seeing instances where vehicles are driving by, people are debussing from their vehicles and assaulting or pushing activists over the road. So I think in some cases we need to make sure that our drivers are trained and aware that obviously that kind of behaviour could happen in front of them, and obviously they don't want to be part of that either. But also it's the delay. We need to think about delays and the cost of the cost of living crisis. There's been so much industrial action, port closures, rail strikes, and it's totally out of our control. But it ripples down the supply chain, and if we don't have a plan B, is foreseeable, we're going to end up in problems.
Well, I know these are more issues we could discuss for a lot longer, but I'm going to have to wrap it up, and I just want to wrap up with a final thought from each of you, just a sentence. We've talked a little bit about what you need from, well, we haven't today, but in other panels we've talked about what you need from TAPA. What would be on your kind of TAPA wish list that you'd like them to be looking at or doing more of? In a sentence, Steve, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I think they're doing this already, but I love the idea of the working groups. Joe mentioned it, we've got all this information, and actually bringing it together, there's commercial issues we have to consider, but TAPA is the honest broker. They're the organisation that can bring us together, can lower these barriers, and actually maybe facilitate, which they do already, more discussion, more sharing of information. So that's great. That would be my wish.
Francesca.
I agree with Steve. It's something that I will let you say, but I just add something like a little bit more higher level on the highest security level required on technology applied on the truck. That could be a cost, but it gives a lot of added value, in my opinion.
Michaelis.
Yeah. Actually, I'm working with Marcus in the TAPA standards and the team, so I wouldn't like to put extra work to me. So please stop all these requests. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, we would be happy to work in all these ideas, and I think it's the normal way to involved and to have new standards in place, covering all the new risks, and that's the point of having new standards every 3 years. So for me, because it was the topic of the day, I would focus more on what do we expect with a corporation of a company being certified and using a subcontractor. Today in the standard says you need to have a contract in place, you need to have specific obligations, but do all people understand what that means? Maybe we should have, again, a document created, some guidelines, how you should manage this. I think it will help a lot all the members how they should control and manage this.
Thank you. Joe and then Cedric.
Yeah, very similar. We work with the 3 TAPAs globally, and to be able to facilitate conferences like this, to make sure people are getting together, that we're sharing this knowledge and creating standards and hopefully sharing data eventually. I think TAPA and industry organizations like this do a fantastic job. I also think TAPA, from their being the honest broker, managing the data and influencing and being able to give the data to police forces to provoke a response, because everything we're talking about is the problem. But I think the next level, which TAPA is absolutely moving on to globally, is being able to liaise with police forces to get a proper response. So I love the cooperation between TAPA and Europol for Europe. I think that's really impressive.
Good. Now I have the honor to be the last one. I would like to address 2 things. One, as a technology vendor, we are happy with the cooperation because we try to drive the technology to the highest level, so the standards might go up over time. And that's what we really embrace. The other thing, when we talk about the subcontractors, which is for me is still a little bit under-addressed item in here. When we look at a fleet with trucks and trailers and drivers and dispatchers, the subcontractor should be the same driver as with a truck, only without a truck. So he should be in the same safe environment where he can roll out his job management. And even the subcontractor for a single drive from Munich to Barcelona should be part of that same digital ecosystem. And so that means that when we talk about tracking, it's not only about tracking, but it's also about job management. And the tracking is just a very little part of that. So when we look at, let's say, future developments, then all truck without driver, and even that single driver should be in one ecosystem. And that's something that, for example, we are working on.
Well, thank you, Cedric, and thank you all of our panelists for joining us today. And as we let our panelists leave the stage, we will be preparing to welcome our next speaker, but we'll also be hearing from TAPA EMEA 2023 Premier Partner, Johnson Controls. Thank you.